So in the first video, we talked about the war zone dreams of soldiers who had been in combat zones, but not actual combat themselves. This time we're going to talk about the dreams of soldiers who had actual confirmed kills in combat. As you can imagine, it's quite a bit more intense. So unlike the previous video, where we looked at the dreams of soldiers who had been near combat, but not actually in battle themselves, today's video we're going to talk about the dreams of soldiers who had been in actual firefights, had confirmed kills even, and we wanted to see what their dreams were going to be like. Well, when we took a look at the collection of the over 500 different patient contacts that Dr. Wyatt collected over a 7-month time period while he was there in Afghanistan, one of the things that emerged was that when you saw soldiers who had actually been in combat situations, fired upon the enemy, killed the enemy, they reported dreams that had a different character to the others that we talked about in the last video. And I'll give you an example. So this was a commonly reported dream, something very similar to this, reported in many variations in our paper. In this dream, the dreamer is outside the home, and this is a home that's in the quote in the rear. Now that's the lingo for back in the United States. Now instead of being excited, the dreamer is uneasy, like he's still on a mission. He goes into his house, realizes he doesn't have his M4, which is the primary rifle used, so he pulls out a knife. He goes into the kitchen and he sees his wife is there, but she's dressed like the enemy. So he's convinced that she's going to try to kill him, so they engage in battle. He attacks her, and oftentimes they would report that this part of the dream felt like slow motion. He slashes her throat. He keeps thinking that it's terrible, but at the same time he's convinced that his wife is his enemy or his girlfriend. Oftentimes after reporting a dream like this, they would comment on it, like saying things like, how do I know when I'm going to be able to turn this off? Am I safe from my family? Am I going to snap or something? Well, first of all, let's compare this dream to the previous dream. In the previous dream, if you recall, the dreamer was outside the home, but was trying to defend his family members in the home from wild animals that were running towards him and trying to get past him. For every one that he would neutralize, 2 more would get past him and go attack the family, even though he never really saw it. This dream's a little different. He's the one attacking the family. So it's an interesting twist here to this dream content. Now, as you can imagine, soldiers that had this dream were very disturbed by them. They're very upset. But it's important not to get Freudian here. Dreams are not expressions of wishes. That's an idea that Freud developed, and at the time, Freud's work was revolutionary. But we have since then found some of the aspects of his theory don't quite hold up, and that's one of them. It's an oversimplification to say that we dream about things that we wish for. But nevertheless, that idea persists. And many times they might have a dream and think, does this mean that I want to kill my wife? No, it doesn't mean that at all. I mean, if they had that desire, they would know that they had that desire. So it's not that. But getting back to the imagery itself, let's examine what it really does mean. Again, like the previous dream, the soldier starts off outside the house. So he's outside of the norm, the place that's normally thought of as safe, where our everyday kind of normal way of living is represented by the house. So he's entering it, but he's on a combat mission. So unlike the previous one where he's defending animals that are trying to get into it, he's entering it. So he's the animal in a sense. Then he pulls out a knife. Very common theme here. They don't have the gun, so they pull out the knife. Why would that be there? Well, the knife is a more personal, face-to-face kind of weapon. It's more intense because it's more intimate. It's not something you shoot from far away. So it's a personal, intense conflict between himself as killer and then the wife who is in enemy clothing. So what this dream does is actually depict the fear that they have of coming home. And the exact questions that he asks, am I going to snap? Am I going to be able to turn it off? Or what the dream raises. But it does it in very vivid images. And it's, I think, very notable that the enemy clothing on the wife is what triggers this. So let's take a look at this using the dream hack method. So if you remember from one of my early videos, the dream hack is to take the dream content and put it into the following sentence. That my life is progressing as if X. So for this dream, when we put it into the dream hack, it gives us the sentence. My life is progressing as if I'm coming home and there's still enemies in my own home. And in fact, it's my own family members. And I think when you look at it that way and you put the as if part in there and recognize the symbolic nature of the dream, it brings up the theme. And the theme is, after having been in combat, remember these guys have actually killed people, that has affected them to the point where they feel like they're on edge, like they're dangerous, like they are just going to come home and they're going to see an enemy where there really isn't an enemy, or they will start treating their significant other like they were the enemy. That's very much what happens in this type of dream. Now, Dr. Wyatt had some really interesting observations about this that he talks about in the paper with us. And one of them is that a lot of the soldiers that reported being in combat and actually killing enemies, they reported that it's not anything like what you typically see in Hollywood, where there's this intense moment of truth where the protagonist has got the gun and they see the enemy in their sights and will they shoot or won't they, or can they take another life? Real soldiers that have been in this situation, they say it's not like that at all. The enemy pops up, you point, you shoot before you even know what happens. It's the training. The training basically trains your reflexes to do that. Now, I've been in training, in basic training and in officer training myself, and not been in any combat situations myself, but I can attest to that is definitely what they do. And it's for a good reason. They have a mission to accomplish, and that is killing the enemy. You can't get out there and sing Kumbaya with the enemy. It's not going to work too well. And because our military has a very specific goal in mind, they're going to use the techniques that work the best. What the training does is it brings about a reflex. It trains your reflexes to fight, just like any martial art training. Now, I think that where you can see this in the dream content is the fact that it's so effortless and so automatic and instinctive. Now, obviously, if it wasn't that way, they'd probably be dead. But because of the way it's trained, it gives them this sort of dichotomy. And that's, I think, where the Hollywood depiction of this comes from. So, yes, it's not realistic in the sense of that they don't have this moment of truth in the moment. But remember what storytellers do, professional storytellers do, if they do it well, is not to depict life as it is, but they depict life in its essence. So there really is still that dilemma there. It's just unconscious, and it's emerging in this dream. The dream is depicting that dilemma, that very dilemma is, am I a killer? Am I the kind of person that could kill someone who's close to me if I thought they were the enemy? There's no better way to depict that inner conflict than a dream like this. So if you take another step back and take a look at the dream as a whole, it really does encapsulate their current life situation, especially near the time frame in which they had been in combat and killed somebody because they had to, or because that was the mission, or what have you. The dream imagery incorporates everything that goes with it, the good, the bad, the ugly, all of it, all at once. The dreamer, for example, is not killed. The dreamer is successful. Therefore, that depicts the side of it that is efficient and effective. Of course, the dark side of this, though, is that fear. The fear that maybe comes from the fact that they have the ability to kill, and they might be wondering in moments of weakness whether they really should be able to do that. Like, should I have that kind of power? But they do, nonetheless. So, where do we go from here? In the last video, we're going to talk about how do you use these dreams, or how did Dr. Wyatt use these dreams, and further thoughts on what you can do with this sort of thing in a therapy situation, or if you're just wondering for yourself and you have dreams that have themes like this, and how understanding dreams and dream content can help you get past some of these difficult conflicts and hopefully wind up in a better place mentally.